get rid of fear. It can be an engine to motivate you and make you work hard. But at a certain point, though, fear can hold you back. It's easy to get complacent and to start thinking, man, I've done all right, I'm comfortable. Let me not risk trying to do something I'm not sure I can do. Sometimes you fail, but sometimes you succeed.
Right.
And you can learn from both, as long as you're willing to be self-critical and kind of evaluate when things don't work, that you don't need to be afraid.
Imagine being a kid from Honolulu, Hawaii, with the dream to become president of the United States. You're raised by a single mother living paycheck to paycheck, but with the help of your grandparents and academics, you go on to graduate from Columbia University and Harvard School of Law. You moved to Chicago at 24 years old to serve as a community organizer and eventually become Illinois State Senator. You capture the world's attention with your keynote speech at the 2004 Democratic National Convention. Shortly after that, you make history as the first African-American president serving 2 terms. Today, you are regarded as one of the most influential leaders in modern history, a great father and husband who expanded healthcare to millions, rescued the economy from a great recession, and will continue to inspire the world for many generations. My name is Vic Blends, and this is Deep Cut with Barack Obama. Thank you to the sponsor of this episode, GetJoy, the best way to feed your dog fresh and wholesome meals, backed by Animal Vet Nutritionist. Click the link down below and get 60% off your first auto ship box with the code VIC60. Now let's get back into the episode.
Vic,
What's going on?
how you doing, man?
Mr. President, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Welcome to the shop, man. I'm
Thank
good.
you. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you
you being here.
All right, this is my spot right here.
It's you right here.
This is a nice setup you got here.
Hey, man, we
Little
gotta,
candle and all
make
that?
it cozy,
All right.
man.
Okay. I see you.
How you feeling?
I feel good. How you been?
Blessed, man. Blessed.
Yeah. Man, I've been reading about all the stuff you've been doing.
Yeah, you checked in?
I have.
I appreciate that.
It's impressive.
Thank you. I can say the same for you.
I appreciate you. So, when did you start cutting hair?
When I was 17,
So you were 17, you decided, you know what, I think I can pull this off.
well, I thought I was gonna go to college, so
Okay.
barbering was gonna be a side hustle.
Right.
I was gonna go make $5, $10 in the dorm. I started,
sense.
felt a passion. God told me if I took it serious, it would open doors for me. I decided to go and follow that dream.
That's it. So, and at what point did you get your own chair, your own shop?
As soon as I graduated high school, I decided to go
Okay.
right to barber school instead of college and
All right.
pursue that. Got my license, got into the shop, and then somehow we're here.
Somehow we're here.
So real quick, how do you want to do your haircut today?
All right, so I keep it short. Nothing fancy, I don't do much of a line.
Yeah.
Basically, my regular barber, she just takes, whoop, goes
Yep.
goes with the goes with the grain.
Yep.
And I don't have a tight line. I leave it pretty natural.
Yeah.
So overall, just kind of like it is now, except just clean it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah. It's probably been a long time since you had to explain what kind of haircut you wanted. I assume you've been with the same barber for a good amount of time.
Well, I had a guy named Zarif in Chicago, and then when I got elected president, he had some kind of hookup with some airline where he was willing to come once a week from Chicago to give me a cut. And so for 8 years, he cut my hair, and then that continued for about a year and a half, and then COVID happened. And since folks couldn't travel at that point, the whole thing was, all right, what are we gonna do now? Michelle's stylist, she says, you know what? I think I can pull this off. So she just took some clippers and started doing it, and it turned out that, she knew what she was doing too.
There we go, the rest is history.
Yeah.
You never tried a self-haircut during the pandemic?
Man, I'm not doing that. I'm still traumatized. When I was trying to figure out how old I was like 5 years old, 6 years old.
Yep.
And my grandfather, he decided, you know what? I don't know why I'm wasting money. I'm going to cut your hair myself.
There we go.
Except, this tells you how old I am. He had these, it wasn't even electric clippers.
Yep.
It was like these squeeze clippers.
Yeah.
Man, he was finished.
Oh, the squeeze joints.
Yeah, and he was finished. It looked like I had a bunch of rat bites in my hair.
How much was a haircut back in your day? Like 25 cents?
Man, I don't even know, but all I know is he was so cheap, he didn't even want to spend that. And, that experiment went badly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So ever since that time, look, I'm sure you know this, like, the relationship with your barber,
yeah,
that's like
we're breaking the golden rule right now.
We are. That shows how much respect I have for you, that you are even touching my head.
Thank you.
Man, which is why I had to do some investigation,
Yeah, it's cool.
I called up Secret Service. I said, what do you think? We did some deep research and we decided, you know what?
I had to cut.
He's not gonna mess it up too much.
I had to cut 5 service members just to prove that I was good enough to be here for this moment. So I want to kick this off. There's a very special question that I have asked the majority of people that have sat in my chair.
Go ahead.
It's the most important place to start.
All right.
What is your name and what do you do?
My name is Barack Hussein Obama, and I am the ex-president of the United States. These days, I spend most of my time actually on my foundation. Michelle and I set up the Obama Foundation, and its goal is to lift up, promote, train, mentor the next generation of leaders, right? Because our attitude is that, the most important thing we can do is to empower young people, give them a sense of how they can bring about change, how they can have an impact, how they can deal with issues like poverty or healthcare or education. And so we train young people all across the United States, but also on every continent, Africa, Latin America, Asia, Europe. And that's how I'm spending most of my time. And I still spend a bunch of time writing. And right now I'm helping out the Vice President, Kamala Harris, to become the next president of the United States.
It's good, man. It's a very important time. So I want to ask, because for most people, if you were to be a basketball player,
right,
when you were young, you would see either Michael Jordan play, you would see
Well,
LeBron.
when I was young, when I was really young, it wasn't Michael Jordan, it was Dr. J, man. So I'm going way back. I'm an old man.
So we were a hooper, we would see one of our favorite basketball players, and it would be the first impression of what a great player was.
Right.
But for the direction that you went into, what was your first time seeing a representation of what a great leader was?
Oh, that's interesting. So, when I was born in 1961. And so my earliest memories are tied to the civil rights movement. And obviously Dr. King, Malcolm X, those were prominent leaders. John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. But the folks I think who inspired me the most, because I could relate to them, were the grassroots civil rights leaders. People who were working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Freedom Riders. Most of these, they were kids. I mean, they were, college students, people like John Lewis, and they would go and sit in lunch counters, and they're taking abuse, but they're showing people how dehumanizing Jim Crow was. They're riding buses, and sometimes they're getting beat up. In some cases, some died. They're knocking on doors in communities, trying to register people to vote. And I remember watching that, and I said to myself, you know what? To see young people take on those kinds of responsibilities and put themselves on the line on behalf of justice and equality and freedom, that was inspiring to me, and I could relate to it, right? You look at somebody like JFK or Dr. King, you're all like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be all that. But what I know I can do is I can march. I know I can, try to register people to vote. And so that's how I ended up, when I got out of college, I decided to become a community organizer. And that's how I moved to Chicago, was to work in low-income communities, trying to, see if I can give them a lift and work with local leaders, community leaders, just to try to make things a little bit better in those local areas, and that's really what inspired me initially. it wasn't until later that I said, all right, well, maybe I'll try to run for office. But that wasn't my initial inspiration.
Yeah. One thing that I admire is your self-belief.
Yeah.
For you to come as far as you've came,
Right.
you've had to believe that anything was possible for your life. I want to ask you, where does your self-belief come from? Was it something you were born with, or may have it been something that Miss Hefty instilled in you, your fifth grade teacher?
Okay, so you did your homework. Miss Hefty was a great fifth grade teacher, one of my favorites. And I had lived overseas for a couple of years. I'd moved back, and she was somebody who told me that my heritage, being half Kenyan, was something to be proud of, because she had worked in Kenya. There were a bunch of teachers, coaches, people like that, but my biggest influence was my mother. She was a single mom, had me when she was very young. She was 18 when she had me. And, she just always let me know that, number one, nobody is better than you and nobody's worse than you. You treat everybody with respect. And she also told me that, you've got the skills, if you put your mind to it, to do meaningful things, as long as you work hard and you're accountable. And she gave me a lot of love. And, now my father wasn't around. And so, I'm not unusual in that sense. I didn't really know my father. I met him once when I was 10, and I really was with him for about a month, and that was it. And so for a young black teenager who didn't know his dad very well, I won't lie to you, when I was a teenager, I was, getting into some stuff. Spent a bunch of time. I loved basketball, liked chasing girls, got high. Didn't apply myself that hard in school, but that foundation that my mother had laid, that sense of responsibility, she taught me to love books, and she gave me confidence that if I did apply myself, I could get things done. So that by the time I'm 19, 20, I think some of the anger about my father not being around, some of my insecurities about what does it mean to be a responsible person, what does it mean to be a black man in America, a lot of those issues I began to get more serious about, and took more ownership over my life. And then then you just learn from experience, right? What gives you confidence is you try things. Sometimes you fail, but sometimes you succeed.
Right.
And you can learn from both, right? When you succeed, you go, okay, I got that done because I was focused, I put in the work. When you fail, you realize I'll survive it. It's like I can bounce back, and that gives you confidence. And so I think my mother's values set me on the right direction, but then what happens is that you just start testing out those values in the world, and you see, what kind of impact you can have. And
that's right.
You get a little more impact, you decide, all right, well, let me try, and you just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I love that you said that things don't always go our way.
They definitely
There's going to be a point where we have to face adversity.
That's exactly right.
For you, I'm wondering, what was your biggest loss, and what did you learn from that?
Well, look, I mean, I've made so many mistakes. When I was a community organizer, I thought I was going to set the world on fire, and I did some really, useful things in the community on the south side of Chicago where I was working. But the truth is that for all the work I did there, I didn't end poverty in those communities. We might get a job training center started, but there was still a lot of unemployment. We might get a after-school program for kids set up, but there were still a lot of schools where kids weren't doing well. And in politics, at first I ran for the state senate, which is kind of the state legislature. But my first race where I ran for a congressional office, man, I got whooped. I ran against this guy, Bobby Rush. And he was really well known, and nobody really knew me. I was kind of an up and comer. People were all like, "Wait your turn." I was like, I'm gonna try this out. And I got beat by, I don't know, 25 points or something. I mean, it was a spanking.
Yeah.
But that's an example of me realizing, all right, I didn't do my homework. I didn't think through. It wasn't the right race to run. And yet I learned a lot about how to present myself with other people, how to build coalitions. And I realized, I can survive a loss and bounce back. And so the next race I ran was for the U.S. Senate. I ended up winning that, spoke at the Democratic National Convention. And so it was only 2 years after I had lost that bad race that I ended up, speaking to the entire country, which tells you, you don't always know if you don't try what you might be able to accomplish.
You'll miss every shot you don't take.
You got to take the shot, man.
I love the topic of learning.
Right.
Because life is a forever learning process.
Right.
I'm learning that now at 25 years old. But I
don't even remember what 25 was like, man. You way ahead of the game.
I appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what was the last thing that you learned about yourself?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, at this age, my kids are grown now. Michelle and I, we've been married 32 years. I would say that I'm continually learning something that I began to learn during the presidency, which is to get rid of fear. Like fear can be at your age, fear can be a motivator. It can make you hungry. You want to be significant. You want to do things. You're not sure if you can pull them off. So it can be an engine to motivate you and make you work hard. But at a certain point, though, fear can hold you back, because once you've accomplished a certain amount, then it's easy to get complacent and to start thinking, man, I've done all right, I'm comfortable. Let me not risk trying to do something I'm not sure I can do.
Yeah.
And I think it was, part of the reason why I'd say I was a much better president in my last 2 years in office than my first 2 years in office, even though I think I did a good job my first 2 years in office, was by that point I had gone through everything, right? I had some big victories, I'd had some big losses. People had called me all kinds of names. I had been in the public eye. I had made, I had said stupid stuff, and I'd been criticized for it. And, what you start realizing is that as long as you're operating from a baseline of integrity and you're doing your best, your motives are good, your intentions are right, as long as you're willing to be self-critical and kind of evaluate when things don't work, why they didn't work, that you don't need to be afraid.
Yes, sir.
And that's going to hold you back. And so now, even in small things, part of the reason kids are such quick learners, right?
Yep.
Like a little baby, if they were afraid to fall, they'd never learn to walk, right? If they were afraid to sound stupid, they'd never learn to talk. As we get older, it becomes harder. But now, part of what I do is I push myself sometimes to do things that are outside my comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So...
One thing that I've been teaching myself as of lately is just not to operate in fear-based decisions. But when I will come across a situation, instead of saying, man, what's the worst thing that could happen? Right. Rephrase it to what is the best thing that could happen in this situation.
Exactly.
So I hope the best thing right now is for me to get the approval of showing you this.
All right, let's see how it's looking.
Just let me know if I cleaned you up. Here we go.
Come on, man. Oh, that's tight. See? And it's good because I might be on TV later, so now I know. Because people look at it. And if it was all janky, if you had messed it up, folks would talk about you. They'd say, man.
I might get a couple words.
No, but this is tight. Looks good, man. See,
I think you look like Barack Obama with this haircut, man.
That's the thing. It's the Obama cut right there.
I must say, speaking of TV, you sound just like you do on TV.
I know. The people have been hearing me for a long time. I've been saying a lot of words.
That's right.
I've been saying a lot of words.
For me, and why I think this moment particularly special, not just being able to talk to you, but I've never voted in a presidential election.
Right.
Because I just have never had faith in politics.
Right.
For me, it's hard to trust another person to take care of my people in my community. And I've always believed in being the change that you want to see.
Right.
Which is why I get up every day, I fight the good fight instead of waiting. So for this being the first time that I will be voting, what advice would you give to me to start to find a way of figuring out what candidate aligns with my values?
I think it's a great question. And obviously, there are a lot of folks in your situation, right? So, the question's something that I think a lot of people have on their minds. Here's one way to think about it, is that politics is basically how do we as a society make decisions about how resources are allocated, what's prioritized. And we have a representative government, which means we can't all just vote on every single decision about where's a stop sign gonna go, or what textbooks we're gonna use in school. So we gotta elect representatives to do that. And the way that I always advise people to approach it is, first and foremost, figure out what is it that you care about? What are your values? What are the issues that are important? What do you see in your community that's going on? Don't take for granted that the way it is the way it has to be. We have the power collectively to make different decisions. And so once you have a sense of what's important to you and what you care about, the next step is to start looking into who is it that's making these decisions, and who do I think aligns with my values and my priorities and my interests.
That's right.
Right? So, and that happens at a bunch of different levels, right? So the mayor or the city council, they're the ones that are gonna make decisions about garbage pickup, or police departments, and where money goes to parks. School boards might make decisions about what curriculum is being taught in school. You go up a little higher at the state level. They're making decisions about roads. They're making decisions about, what happens if there's a hurricane or a tornado. How is emergency relief provided? You go up a step higher from that, now you're at the national level. And you have members of Congress. They're the ones who are supposed to advocate for your community specifically. And you've got senators who are going to be representing your entire state. And then you've got the President of the United States, who's going to be operating the entire federal government and is supposed to look out for everybody. So in any election, you can just Google and look up and find out, all right, what is Kamala Harris proposing and what does she stand for? What is Donald Trump proposing and what does he stand for? What are the people who are running for Senate or running for Congress? What do they stand for? And part of what you want to do is to see, given how you feel about various issues, are they speaking to it in a way that you can relate to, that resonates with you? Now, one last thing I think is important as you're making up these decisions, because I talk to a lot of folks your age. I remember when my daughters were first voting. You can't expect politics to solve every problem, right? So you're right to say to yourself, I have to be the change I want. You still have to do what you need to do in your communities. Politics is not going to solve every problem. You can have the best person. I think I was a good president, but I didn't end racism in America. I didn't end, poverty in all corners of America. What I did do, though, because I think I was aligned with the issues that the communities, many people across the country care about, needing healthcare, needing job training, wanting to make sure that their kids, if they want to go to college, can afford it. I focused on those issues and I made them a little bit better. So I passed the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. 50 million people ended up getting health care because of that. Another 50 million who had pre-existing conditions, who were already sick, or had an illness in the past and were having trouble getting health insurance. Now insurance companies had to give them coverage and treat them fairly.